Hey guys, so I had the stream at some point in the last 2 weeks. I forget the exact date. If I find it in my dream journal, I'll put it in the description box below in the future. It's not so important. Today is Saturday, the 29th of June, 2024. So it was between 15th of June, 2024, and today, Saturday, the 24th of June, 29th of June, sorry, 2024. So I'll crack straight into it. In this dream, I was in Quito, the capital city of Ecuador, which is in the Andean highlands. I think it's about 2,800 meters above sea level, which is, what, like over 8,000 feet high up above sea level. So despite being almost literally on the equator, there's actually a place called La Mitad del Mundo, which means the middle of the world, just north of Quito, which is literally on the line of the equator. And for those of you who don't know, by the way, who don't speak Spanish, Ecuador is the Spanish word for equator, and the official name for Ecuador as a country is, in Spanish, it translates to English as the Republic of the Equator. So this country is literally named after the equator, and Quito is almost on the equator. So you'd expect it to be really hot, right? But of course, because it's so far above sea level, it's actually quite a temperate, cool climate, and it gets cold at night. And you go a little higher, and it gets really cold. And about 45%. It's at least 40% of Ecuador's population. I think it's more like 45% lives in the Andean highlands. And it's a temperate climate mostly up there. In a lot of places, it snows, and it's quite frequently. So it's not what a lot of people would expect from a tropical country. And then about 5% of the population lives in the Amazon, which is, of course, tropical because it's much lower. And the rest live down on the coast, which is, of course, tropical because it's at or near sea level. There are hills on the coast, but they're not very high. So I was in, relatively speaking, get up to like maybe, 500 or 600 meters above sea level at max, really, which is about 1,500 to 1,800 feet. Right. So anyway, I was in Quito, the capital of Ecuador, and it was cold, cool as the climate is there. It was late in the day. It was around 4 p.m. and I was near El Panacillo, Little Bread Hill, which is near the district of La Mariscal. I'll put a pin in the description box for a which shows you roughly where I was in the city, more kind of in the closer towards the. I was in the old town. That's in the old part of the city, but I was up on the slopes of the Pichinches, which there are two volcanoes immediately to the east of the city, and I was kind of part way up there, so I could see out to the west a lot of the city below me. But it was old town, kind of up towards the Pichinches. If you know Quito, you'll know where I'm talking about roughly. I don't know the names of the suburbs because I haven't spent much time in that city for a long time, but you can see where I was from the Google Maps pin, and I was there, and everyone was just freaking out. Man, there were hundreds of Ecuadorians around me in panic and terror and just shock and fear and confusion. You could see it on their faces. Everyone was kind of yelling and. I could see people gasping in shock, and their eyes were bugging out. Most Ecuadorians are mestizos, mixed European and indigenous descent, and so most of the people look like that. There were a few, indigenous people there too, but everyone was reacting the same way. Indigenous people from some of the highland tribes, and everyone was just running around, panicking, freaking out, and it was just everyone was in fear. There was this real atmosphere of fear, and the reason was, the sun was setting in the west. You could see it coming down, and there were all these missiles just flying through the sky, and they were just crisscrossing the sky. There were just so many, and they almost formed a kind of like a net with their smoke trails just roaring over. But despite the panic, this was the interesting thing, and all the fear. Actually, Ecuador was untouched, so Ecuador wasn't getting hit. So everyone was really freaking out because they were worried that the war would come to Ecuador, but it wasn't. Ecuador was actually safe. So I got the intuitive download on the interpretation when I kind of prayed on it and meditated upon it in the following few days. It took me a little while to get the meaning of this one, but this was a prophetic dream about the war. So basically, Ecuador is protected by God because the people, despite all the issues there, like this, the main issues in Ecuador around corruption. That's the bane of all the Latin American countries, and it kind of infiltrates everything. It's not just government; it's business. You'll get business owners who treat their workers like crap. You'll get employees who steal from business owners. You'll get people who just try to rip you off sometimes. Honestly, though, I was like, having lived there for 4.5 years, most Ecuadorians are pretty good. Like most don't. Like most don't try to rip you off. It's but that's me dealing with more like poorer and like working class people, some middle class people. Apparently, like I have Ecuadorian friends, and they said the corruption is worse within certain socioeconomic branches of society. I actually had one friend, he said it's worst among some of the wealthy and some of the poorer ones who want to become wealthy. That's the way he described it. But honestly, like the poorer people in Ecuador and the middle class ones I found were like mostly pretty honest. But yeah, there are certain, like, it's not so much ethnic, but there's certain socioeconomic brackets of society which are much more corrupt than others in Ecuador, which is interesting actually. But I mean, there's terrible corruption everywhere in many parts of the country, and it's really holding the place back. Although interestingly, it's slowly getting better in recent decades. Like it's slowly decreasing, and then. But the corruption is kind of, I noticed when it was there, it kind of extends to everything. So like, for example, a lot of the relationships are really bad because the men will go out and sleep with, I mean, on the coast, they go out and even if you have a wife and you go to the chong, what do they call it? The chongos? There's a word for it. You go to the whorehouse on the weekend and that's just normal. Like in a lot of these fishing villages, you have your wife and then you go bang hookers on the weekend with the money you made fishing. It's like, the culture of integrity in relationships is not good in a lot of parts of the country. And it's like the corruption is not just economic, it extends to all facets of society. I dated a really beautiful, nice Shuar indigenous girl. Well, she was a bit, kind of see her character a bit differently after dated briefly. And then, when it kind of, ended and she was pretty rude. It was maybe not so nice, but she was a pretty nice girl, but she was a bit proud. She could definitely use Jesus in the Bible. I'll put it that way. But to be fair, my only bad experience really with her was how it ended when she was a bit rude. She was really nice the rest of the time, but she talked about this. She said she refuses to date South American guys now and Ecuadorians. She said she had so many bad experiences. She said in her experience, they'll just emotionally manipulate you and tell them they're in love with you, and then they'll have sex with you and they'll just ghost you and like not care. That was basically how she summed it up. She refuses to date South American men and Ecuadorian men. She'll only date Europeans and like Anglo-Saxon and European men now. She described, and I was funny. She was telling me how she dated this Dutch guy. And she said she'd found most South American guys were nice in the beginning, but then the guard dropped, like the facade dropped, and then you realize that a lot of them weren't that. The ones she dated, it's not all of them. There's plenty of good guys in South America and Ecuador, but they weren't. They weren't what they'd seemed, what they'd presented at the beginning of the relationship. And she described her kind of shock. She dated this Dutch guy and he seemed really nice at the beginning, and then nothing changed. He was just this nice guy. And she said to me, I quote, I didn't even know these kinds of men existed. Because, like that problem that's still a real problem in Ecuador. Like the machismo, like a lot of women still getting beaten up and then just, like not treating the woman very well and, going out and banging lots of other women and then having kids outside your marriage. And that's a common problem there. And And actually, in the West, it's gone so far now that actually, if anything, I would say, I mean, there's still a lot of men acting badly, but there's now plenty of women who are actually um, acting like bad men did in the past, and who just destroy families and um, you know do false accusations, and then or just like divorce the guy on made up grounds, take the kids, and then take all his money and leave him for dead. I mean, so we've got the pendulum's kind of swung too far the other way in our countries, but interesting to consider. But the point is, the corruption extends to everything in Ecuador. It's not just money, and so there is still there's quite a lot of crime compared to Western countries, but historically it's actually the second safest country in South America after Chile. So they're actually naturally peaceful people. So, and that's more the point I'm getting to now. So it's not like that in Chile and Venezuela. There's a darker element there where there's a lot of the people will escalate to violence much more quickly. And there are historical reasons for this. Ecuador has a much more peaceful history, whereas Colombia and Venezuela have had a lot more. Especially Colombia, they've been in a civil war for 70 years. It kind of changes the mentality of the people, as a Colombian friend of mine explained it to me. But Ecuadorians are noted among South Americans that they're often described as being the most humble of all Latin American people, and they're very peaceful people. They really are. They don't like conflict. They like to avoid it. And I mean, living in Ecuador, it really restored my faith in humanity. I mean, if I had to sum up the national character of of the Ecuadorian people, I would describe them as sweet, loving, humble, friendly, and kind. They're really just beautiful people. It's a godly country. Like you go into like people are just so polite and courteous. It's like the freaking 1940s or the 50s, and in that sense, and how it was in our countries. You'll be sitting in a little a little restaurant. This is not for rich people, for like working class people, and working class people and peasants will come in and they'll say in Spanish like "good day," like "hello, sir," like or like what was the Spanish term? Like buen provecho, which means like have a good meal. Like they'll sort of tip your hat. This is like normal. These kinds of courtesies, and that like the kind of outrageous, absurd scenes you'll see on social media or on YouTube. These videos of people particularly in the US, just going crazy, like adults starting fights and screaming at each other and like beating each other up and just acting like animals. That just doesn't happen there. The people are very civilized, and actually, if anything, I noticed in many cases the poorer people are like some of the best. I heard others Ecuadorians say this. In many cases, it's actually the richer, wealthier Ecuadorians who are kind of acting out and are more corrupt. I mean, they're really civilized people. I'm serious. Like you can't. I come back to New Zealand and it feels like the frickin' jungle, and then I go to the Amazon jungle and it's like acting like fricking like they're so civilized, yet they're in the jungle and they're civilized and we're in the civilization, but we're acting like it's law of the jungle. So where am I going with all this? Love covers a multitude of sin. It's a quote in the Bible. I think that kind of sums up for me why Ecuador will be protected from the war. There's all this corruption and stuff. That's why I mentioned it, and it's a little bit more violent and compared to Western countries. But historically, actually, like among Latin American countries, it's always been very safe. It's not safe right now because they're in a low-level civil war, but they'll win that. They'll come out of it because the civil war there has been created by Mexican and Colombian drug cartels, and they're coming from outside the country. They're working with gangs and cartels, smaller time gangs inside the country, like the Choneros from Chone, I think it's how you pronounce it. A small town it's a town in the Ecuadorian coastal lowlands. But basically, this problem, the civil war, is being driven by Mexican and Colombian groups. So it's more like an invasion. So all they have to do is, well, it's easier said than done. It's going to be complicated and take a long time. But they have to get rid of these invaders, these invading criminal groups. But it's not like Mexico or Colombia where the cartels and the gangs are endemic to Mexico and Colombia. It's not. Ecuadorians are such peace-loving people that those groups never really developed there. So they'll get rid of them in time, and it will go back to being a peaceful country. I mean, the government there is taking strong measures to get on top of this population. They're doing like they do votes, and then they let everyone vote on the measures, so it's democratic, and most of the population is voting for hard measures because it's really gotten out of control, and they want to get it back under control. But this is Ecuador is really a hidden gem, I would say. It's really underrated. I mean, it's the size of New Zealand, and it's got such amazing biodiversity. It's extremely beautiful. It's got a real amazing diversity of different landscapes and ecosystems in a very small area. You've got the Amazon, then you've got the cloud forests on the east side of the Andes. You've got the Andean highland ecosystems, and then right up to snow-capped volcanoes. And then you've got the cloud forests again on the west side of the Andes. Then you've got the tropical lowland rainforests on the lowlands of the Pacific, coastal lowlands. And then you've got, the coast. And you've got the Galapagos. And like after they get through the Civil War, before that and after that, it's a safe country. I felt safer, and I was safer and treated with more kindness and respect than in New Zealand. I mean, like, the most common piece of graffiti I saw in Ecuador was "I love you." I have photos of this. The towns in the Amazon, it was just blah blah blah, "I love you," blah blah blah, "I love you," blah blah blah. It was just "I love you, I love you." I had a couple of times where I'd be walking around town, and I'd like have some Ecuadorians lean out the car window and say "I love you." Like, they're just so sweet. I mean, there were some times when I heard people muttering like effing Fucking gringo. They were muttering it, but I could hear it. So that happened too a few times, but not much, not much at all. like mostly they're very, they're just the sweetest people. I could tell you so many stories that they really, I love that country, and I really want to get back. They just deserve the best. They're just great. I would open up I made friends with this family in the Amazon, and I opened up to them about my trauma with my family. And I've got this 90-year-old abuelita, grandmother, and she went, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, you could see the empathy on her face. I open up and try to talk about my feelings and emotions here in New Zealand, and they'll just shut down and go cold, or won't say anything, or they'll literally tell you, quote, "I am not your psychologist." Because in New Zealand, you only talk about your feelings and your emotions with your psychologist, or when you're drunk. And how sad is that? And in Ecuador, as in New Zealand, yeah, the younger generations are better at talking about their feelings and their emotions. But even baby boomers and like people who are 90 years old have really high emotional intelligence in Ecuador. Like the EQ of Ecuadorians is off the charts, the emotional intelligence. And even Afro-Ecuadorians, I've heard them saying like there's parts of Ecuador like they're much less racist than a lot of parts of our country. Like, apparently the racism towards people of African descent on the coast in Ecuador is, you can't compare it to a lot of the racism in the US. Like they're very, and like, the transgender people there, like I noticed they were very accepting of them. Yeah, there's still other issues, like, there's still quite a bit of racism. It tends to be more subtle and hidden towards indigenous groups. But my point is, like, yeah, it wasn't just that 90-year-old grandmother when I talked about my emotional issues. Her daughter, lovely woman, who's late, must be mid-50s, and I'm friends with her daughter who is late 20s, and mum still looks great in her mid-50s because she's got a happy family, and they're all they're strong Christian values, so they're very loving, good values. So radiate is a quite beautiful person physically, but then like radiates this beautiful inner energy, and all the daughters have that too. Beautiful. I met there's their one son who's just got great energy from him. Is just the nicest guy. But I talked to the mum, who's a baby boomer in her late 50s about my emotional issues, and like you can talk to them about your feelings, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, blah blah blah. In New Zealand, they'll just shut down. For them, most of them will just shut down, or they can't talk about it. They're all suppressed, and it's where a lot of the darkness comes from. Um, they're just so kind and sweet. They really are, and they're really open-hearted. And most of South America is like that. And yes, like most of South America, the corruption is there. But unlike a lot of South America, Ecuadorians are very peaceful people. They don't like violence, and they will, like, I've seen it, fights in the street in Ecuador. People will look freaked out, and they'll come immediately to break it up and to stop it. Whereas in some other South American countries, people enjoy it and are like, yeah, yeah, we want to see a fight. I won't name names, but so that was the symbolism of the dream, is that, Ecuador will be protected in this war. It's spiritually protected, and it's not going to be involved. Ecuador is under spiritual protection because it's a godly country, unlike Babylon, the Anglo-Zionist empire right now. I mean, God's spiritual protection has been lifted, that because we're just not virtuous enough. We're too in vice and sin. But Ecuadorian, like, for, like I said, love covers a multitude of sin. For all their issues, they're basically like, they're kind, loving, warm, friendly. Yeah, just peace-loving people. So there are spiritual laws around this. This works both individually and collectively, but Ecuador as a country is going to be protected from the war. So people were freaking out, but they didn't need to, because those missiles, the symbolism was like the Iron Dome. That's what I got. People were thinking that the missiles were gonna hit them, but it was actually more like this is symbolic. The Israeli, quote, Iron Dome missile system. Those missiles intercept missiles that are coming in. So it was God symbolically showing that there's a wall, like a spiritual force field of protection, like an Iron Dome of spiritual protection over Ecuador. So they might freak out, but they don't need to, because the war's not going to come there. But interestingly, that did actually show me that war will come into South America. The missiles were landing nearby. It looked like they were hitting Colombia. So I think, and other people have seen this, there will be war in South America in World War III, and it will rage in parts. We're probably looking millions and millions of people are going to die in huge battles in South America, especially later when the Allies come through and for revenge and retaliation. And I think they're going to turn Colombia and Venezuela into rubble mostly, because our side is just going to be out for blood after, we get nuked and invaded. We're just going to be, entire families and family dynasties will be wiped out. We're going to be partially genocided. We're just going to be out for blood, and we're going to come back, and basically people have been shown we're going to bomb and invade every single country that attacked us. I saw one of these comments on a YouTube video of a prophetic dream of World War III, and this person was commenting, giving their own prophetic dream of World War III from God in a comment form, and they were showing them in the future. Ooh, getting chills now. And they were looked really, really angry. This is after 10 years, 15 years of brutal, like all-out total war fighting. This was an American man of European descent, and he had lost an eye, and the Americans were just getting ready, and they were just getting ready to go overseas, and they just wanted blood. It's like everyone was so pissed and angry, like, people that, had their friends and family, tortured, killed in nuclear blasts, tortured, shot, put in concentration camps. They were like, we're not messing around. We're coming to kill you and hurt you and make you feel the pain we've experienced, and we're gonna get you, and we're coming. And like he got shown, yeah, I've been shown similar things. We're basically going to go to. It's going to be. This is saying, if you kick me when I'm down, you better pray I don't get up. Well, unfortunately, for the other side, the Axis countries, they're going to destroy us initially. The Anglo-Saxon countries, all the Western countries get destroyed in the sense like badly defeated, but particularly the Anglo-Saxon countries, US, UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, we just get absolutely smashed and crushed and defeated. But the defeat isn't permanent. We turn around after a certain point, and then yeah, we get up, and then we just want blood. I mean, because it's like, it's like one of these action movies where, the protagonist gets his wife and entire family murdered, and then it's just like he spends 5 years training just to go get revenge. It's not. I'm not condoning revenge. Justice and revenge are two different things. But yeah, like I think that's what I was being shown is that yeah, the war will be in South America and it will come later. It could be earlier. I don't know. But other people have been shown they'll be fighting in South America, and I think yeah, it'll come to Venezuela and Colombia. I think like the U.S. and their allies are just going to invade and bomb and just freaking level the Colombia and Venezuela is in retaliation for those countries invading and the U.S. and killing a lot of American civilians. But Ecuador will stay out of it and won't do that, and Ecuador will be safe. So the missiles partly represented that shield of protection, but they also some of them were headed north to Venezuela and Colombia. So I think the wars like I'm pretty sure they were hitting there. It showed the symbolism was that there will be war in South America, but Ecuador won't be affected. So, I mean, that's it. I hope that's been of some value. Please refer to the disclaimer in the description box below if you've not already done so. And I will add the new piece of information there. It kind of showed indirectly that the north of the Sierra, the northern highlands of Ecuador, will be a safe place. You'll have to watch out for some of the volcanoes because there's going to be a lot of earthquake and volcanic activity over the Earth changes period. You don't want to be too near the sea and you want to be careful around volcanoes. But it was showing interestingly that it had been previously shown that the Ecuadorian Amazon will be safe, the southern highlands will be safe. It seemed to be showing that, yeah, the northern highlands will basically be safe as well. So I think all of the Ecuadorian Andes will basically be okay and safe. You might have to watch out with some volcanic eruptions, but it seemed to be showing that Quito will be all right. So there's that too. Okay, thanks.